Jesus walks on the water is a story of faith and divine power. Before the miracle of walking on water, Jesus had just performed another great sign, feeding over 5,000 people with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The crowd, amazed by this, wanted to take him by force and make him king. John 6:15. But Jesus knew his mission was spiritual, not political. In the book of John 6:15 KJV. When Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. He withdrew to a mountain to pray, sending his disciples ahead of him across the Sea of Galilee. In Matthew 2:22 p.m. KJV. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship, and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. This was not unusual, as Jesus often sought solitude in prayer. As the disciples set sail, a strong wind arose. The Sea of Galilee, known for sudden violent storms, became rough, making their journey difficult. Matthew 2:24 p.m. KJV says, But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. In Mark 6:48 KJV. Jesus saw them toiling in rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them, and about the 4th watch of the night he cometh unto them walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. The 4th watch of the night between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. was a time of deep darkness, exhaustion, and fear for the disciples. They had been rowing against the storm for hours. Amid the chaos, Jesus appeared, walking on the water toward them. The disciples, exhausted and afraid, did not recognize him and thought they were seeing a ghost. In Matthew 2:26 p.m. KJV. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. Immediately, Jesus reassured them. In the book of Matthew 2:27 p.m. KJV. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. In Greek, Jesus' words, it is I epsilon gamma omega epsilon iota mu iota, ego eimi echo, God's self-identification in Exodus 3:14 IAM. This is a divine declaration of his power over creation. Peter, always the bold disciple, responded with faith and asked Jesus for a sign. In Matthew 2:28 p.m. KJV. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. Jesus invited Peter. In Matthew 2:29 p.m. KJV. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. For a moment, Peter experienced the supernatural walking on water just as Jesus did. However, as he focused on the wind and waves, his faith faltered. In Matthew 2:30 p.m. KJV. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. In Matthew 2:31 p.m. KJV. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? This moment shows both Peter's weakness and Jesus' grace. Though Peter's faith was small, his cry for help was enough for Jesus to save him. When Jesus and Peter returned to the boat, the storm ceased immediately. In Matthew 2:32 p.m. KJV. And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. This miracle demonstrated Jesus' divine authority over nature. The disciples, in awe, worshipped him. In Matthew 2:33 p.m. KJV. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth thou art the Son of God. Mark's Gospel notes that they were utterly amazed, because they had not fully understood the previous miracle of the loaves and fishes. In Mark 6:51-52 KJV. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered. For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. John's Gospel adds that as soon as Jesus entered the boat, they reached their destination. In John 6:21 KJV. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. Lessons from the miracle. 1. Jesus is sovereign over nature. By walking on water, and calming the storm, Jesus demonstrated his divine power. He is not just a teacher or prophet, but the Son of God with authority over creation. 2. Faith requires focus on Jesus. Peter walked on water when his eyes were on Jesus, but he sank when he focused on the storm. Likewise, faith grows when we fix our eyes on Christ, not our circumstances. In Hebrews 12:2 KJV, looking unto Jesus the author and finisher of our faith. 3. Jesus is always there to save. When Peter began to sink, Jesus immediately saved him. No matter how weak our faith, Jesus is ready to rescue us when we cry out to him. In Romans 10:13 KJV, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. 4. Worship is the right response to Jesus. When the disciples saw Jesus' power, they worshipped him. True faith recognizes Christ's deity and leads to worship. Conclusion. The miracle of Jesus walking on water is one of the most powerful demonstrations of his divine nature. It teaches us about faith, trust, and the power of Christ over all things. When we face storms in life, we can remember his words. Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. Matthew 2:27 p.m. If we keep our eyes on Jesus, he will sustain us through every storm. And when we falter, he is always there to catch us.